In this demo, I'm going to show you how to create a cylinder out of clay using a slab. Because cylinders are typically vertical, we want to make sure that our slab is wide enough. Also, when you create your slab, you can use the slab roller or you can roll it out by hand. But just make sure your slab is not too thin or you're going to have trouble when you're constructing. This slab here is about 1/4 inch thick. First of all, before we do anything, we want to make sure our slab is smoothed out. So I'm going to use my rubber rib to take care of that. And because I don't know what the inside or outside of this cylinder is, I'm going to just continue to smooth out both sides. Now, to cut out the slab that you need for the cylinder, you need a rectangle. It's highly suggested that you use a template. So a template is a piece of paper because you can place it right on the slab and trace what you need. In this video, my template is 5 inches tall by 13 inches wide. I'm going to use my fettling knife to carefully trace. I used my fettling knife to cut around the template, so now I have a rectangle. I have some scraps here. I'm just going to put these on the side. Now, the next part is we're going to need to bevel the edges. When we bevel them together, this actually helps create more stability and strength for your cylinder. So when we're beveling, you want to make sure that the edges of this slab is going to meet together like this, because we're not creating a corner, right? We're creating basically a circle at the top and bottom. So if you're unsure how to bevel, first just think about how your cylinder is going to fit together. And it's okay if your slab is a little bit wet and it's like kind of droopy, because right now I'm just figuring out how do I want these two pieces to connect together. So I'm going to take my fettling knife to make sure that I bevel in the right direction. So see, I have one line going that direction, which means I need to bevel the opposite direction on this side. So I'm going to actually flip my cylinder over. And I want to make sure I'm going to do the same thing. Let me double check. Okay. So again, just thinking about how are these pieces going to attach together. So it attaches just like that. So I have beveled both sides, and I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to take care of the scoring. So make sure you're scoring on both sides of your slab where you're going to connect them together. All right, so I've beveled and scored both sides, and now I'm going to take my paintbrush and a little bit of slip. We're going to apply some slip to one of the sides here. And then the next step is actually forming this into a cylinder. So you do have to really pay attention to how all of the sides are going to fit together. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to connect these two sides together. And it's okay if overall you don't really have a cylinder yet, because this is why we don't want the clay to be super, super, super firm. But basically we want these two edges to overlap each other. And because the clay is soft enough, you can actually start blending this edge here together. So my next step here is I'm just trying to blend these edges. What I'm doing is I'm putting my hand inside the cylinder so I can actually brace this wall, because again, the clay is kind of soft. And if you're worried about a big bump forming, you can actually trim that later using your ribbon tool. Now, if you want to add a little water, I just put some slip on here just to help blend it together. But we really want to work on blending it on the outside as well as on the inside. So this is when some of your sculpting tools are going to work very well. Also blend upward, don't just blend side to side. but we really want to make sure that this is blended because we can still shape your cylinder as necessary. So I've blended the outside for a bit, but now I need to actually work on the interior because you can see the interior is just folded. It's actually not blended together. So this might be a little difficult to see in here, but I have to blend that together. And it's the same thing. You want to keep your hand on the outside as you're blending the clay on the inside. And if it's kind of uncomfortable, you can actually take one of your sculpting tools. Also, you can turn your cylinder upside down and also continue blending because again, depending on what you're using this cylinder for, it doesn't matter what's the top or bottom right now because all you're doing is you're just trying to blend that inside and really make sure you work on blending it together because that is probably the weakest part of the cylinder. You shouldn't have to add any water. And again, if you feel like the wall is a little too thick, you can take a ribbon tool and actually trim it a little bit. That's what I'm doing. So this is the clay that got trimmed off. I'm just about done with my cylinder, but of course, depending on what you're using this for, you're going to need to probably allow the cylinder to dry a little bit to leather hard, because if you start moving it around, touching it, you can see the walls are still very soft. Again, it depends on what you plan on doing with this. So there you go. That is how you create a cylinder using a slab of clay.